Hello, everyone. So today on Mi Camino episode, I want to talk about why I am starting this new group. It's actually a Spanish group, which I'm making it in Spanish because I feel like it's that underserved community. And to be honest with you, it's a challenge, because there's a lot of things out there for entrepreneurs. Like I've talked to some of them. I've looked into it, but as far as the Hispanic space, I don't feel like there's a lot. And part of me, and this is kind of like a fun challenge, I guess, because I have a couple business partners. We sit down and we talk about like, okay, hey, we know they need this. We know that this will help improve them, but because of how we are, we know it's hard to convince. But it's a challenge, and we're trying it out. But the reason I'm doing this is because being first generation Hispanic, my parents are from El Salvador. I was born here. Growing up, I grew up with a lot of, the programming. Let's call it programming. The programming that my parents had, right? Work hard, and technically that's it. Find a job, work hard, and save money for a rainy day. We really don't get told strategy or actually get any really good advice in how to accomplish our dreams. And I think it's hard, right? Like, nothing against my parents or any parents out there, even if you're going through this, but I feel like a lot of the times we ask our children, like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, but we didn't accomplish it. And it's not to say, you know, how do I explain this without hurting any feelings? I'm not, I guess I am calling, like, if we want our children to improve, we have to show some improvement of our own, right? We can't be the same base that our parents were. We have to build on that. And I say this because I remember one time my dad, like very little speeches, but I do remember one time he told me, look, I came to this country and I worked the field. I've had a job, whatever, but it's your job to go the next level. And to be honest with you, on it, like right before he passed away, I kind of feel like I accomplished that as far as like raising the level. When I got my first job, I remember getting that from my dad. Like, damn, like you made it. Looking back now, it was anything but. But the fact that to my parents and to myself at 19, I literally felt like, dude, this is it. I'm making more than my parents ever did. That shows the level of how I feel like how behind I was, right? And I'm not, in 2004 I got a job where I was making $14 an hour. I think 14.25 is where I started. So it was a huge accomplishment. It was a level up. But I feel bad because not feel bad. I look back and realize how far I've come, you know, because after that first success of getting $14 an hour, it was a rude awakening. It was a rude awakening because not knowing anything how anything worked, and I really want to say it that way, not knowing how taxes, how finances, how any of that stuff worked. I I right away. Well, one, I thought I made it, but two, I remember when I got that job, I was I was married at the time. I think I was married at the time, but I definitely had my son, and I'm not sure. I don't remember if we were married or not, but we're together. And my dad passed away in that first year where I got that job. My dad passed away a couple months in, so I had to find an apartment and all that. And I remember going to the low income apartments once again. This is why I feel like so much knowledge needs to be divulged out, or we need to share with each other like how things work, because I remember the apartments I went to were some apartments that I knew family members lived there, right? And to me, low income housing was just, it's cheap. I never thought of like, hey, they actually do some math in the background and there's a waiting list because, you can't make too much money. And at that age, at 19, I remember going to the low income, the apartments, right? I don't remember if I knew they were low income, whatever. I just remember they were cheap. And I think my brother used to live there. And I go and I remember when I apply and I put in that I'm making $14 an hour. In 2004, the lady literally told me that, oh, no, you don't qualify. I'm like, what? Dude, I'm a 19-year-old with a wife and a kid. How do I not qualify for assistance? And it's when I realized I make too much money for that help now. And at that age, with no help. I had to pay my own insurance. I had to, there was no assistance. There was no Medicare. But fortunately, that job did offer me insurance. And I remember that like being tripped out at the beginning because when my check would come in, like a third of it would go, well, one to taxes, but a good chunk of it would go to all these benefits, right? And no one ever explained that to me. Even I remember when they gave me my logins and everything, like, oh yeah, well, there's a company, there's stock options, whatever with the company, other people had to teach me, and I knew I couldn't go to my parents. So it is a huge gap. Even being born here, the fact that what you're surrounded around is what you grow up learning kind of holds us back as well because we tend to stay in our communities. I definitely remember my dad and my mom just never expanding to people that had anything bigger, right? It was always, same people, same ideology, same conversation, same, I'm working this job today and then tomorrow night I got to work another job. It's a constant, you got to work. And but I remember that. I remember applying, and I remember this because he tells me you would have to have 8 dependents to be able to qualify for an apartment here. Funny story. I think what is it? By 2018, what 14 years later, I accomplished that. I had 8 dependents with all my kids. But the point was that like it was a rude awakening because I was like, wait, I can't afford anything. Like I had to go rent an apartment. At that time, I remember it was pretty expensive. I think it was like 800, $900. But I got an apartment for me and my wife at the time and my son. And we just basically struggled through it. Not struggle, but it wasn't $14 an hour wasn't what I thought it was gonna be, right? And and I remember when I first got that job, my brother would make fun of me. He's like, "Hey, why did you get like a job where they pay you like that? You should just try to find a cash job." And there's no knock against my brother. Once again, he came. He's actually born in Guatemala, so he still had that programming of work hard and just try to hold on to all your money but not realize how things really work out here, right? And I feel we do have not only is it a language barrier, which I've said on other videos before, is kind of one of my pet peeves, that I had with my parents, like not learning English. I remember my mom like, and that's not why I didn't teach my kids Spanish. It's just it just I don't know. I always have this fight with my mom where she's like she gets mad because I didn't teach the kids Spanish. I'm like, dude, you didn't teach me Spanish. There was no option. When I was a child, we didn't have a bunch of options. We didn't have cable. We didn't have cable, I think, till I was 13. So, no, I think we got like Dish at 12. But the thing is, all I had to watch was Spanish TV. If anything, I got cartoons on Saturday mornings, and I remember after school for an hour or two, remember I would watch like 3 cartoons, and then my parents would get home and it would be Cristina at freaking 4, Primer Impacto at 5, local news at 6, the novela at 7, and the second novela at 7. And if I was good, I'd get to watch the good novela at 9. But it wasn't because they actually made an effort to teach me. It's just that's what all there was around. And when my kids were coming up, I had one that would challenge my mom quite aggressively. He had a mind of his own. I remember one time he until this day, I don't know. It's not. He just doesn't want to try. He just doesn't want to learn the next language or another language. And I remember he was little, and my mom would scream at him, and but he understands it. He would be like, "Why can't?" Oh, one time she tells him, "Mira, qué grandote y todavía no habla español," or something along those lines. Like, look how old you are, and like you don't speak Spanish. And my son turns around at her and is like, "Look at you. How many years have you been here and you don't speak English?" And it was like I was sitting there and I looked at him kind of like, oh, like, bro. But at the same time, I was like, he's not lying. It's very disrespectful. I didn't, kind of challenge him on that, but he's not lying. And that's why he had a point. And the one thing is like, this is why I want to push for this because one, we do have that language barrier that we should try to overcome, but also it's not only the language barrier, it's also like the mentality of how things work. And I realize that and I am very fortunate. I feel this is very fortunate as much as I went with what people would perceive as racism or uh discrimination. which I could definitely looked at it that way. It was. I just looked at it as ignorance, right? I didn't know stuff about these white people I'm working with, and they didn't know stuff about me. But one thing I can admit and attribute to changing that environment is that I learned new things. I learned how things work, not only in the financial side. On I different people gave me different advice that was completely different from what anything I'd ever heard as a child. So this is one of the good things about change your environments. But this is one the reason why I want to start this group, right? Because I worked hard. I worked hard at that company for 13 years, and I was very fortunate with all the opportunities they gave me. Not only opportunities, the training they did. I became a crane operator. I had my own plants, a manager, uh, uh, the traveling, like the amount of opportunities that I got. I was super blessed. But it came to a point, I think, when I started, once I was in management and I see, once I started getting into like politics of the corporation, and all that, this just nagging thing of like, what if I do things for me? You know what I mean? With the company I was at, like I said, I was there for 13 years. We had plenty of projects, huge projects where we saved them a ton of money. And I was well compensated. At least I felt that way. Every year I get my bonus, good 10 grand right there for doing all the stuff you do, which wasn't bad. And, it wasn't bad. I think at the time I was making six figures. But the one thing that drove me to try to do something on my own was that like, there was a constant thought like I've spent 13 years at this company. And not gonna lie, there was something that happened that we were on the fence where I was gonna continue with the company at some point or not. There's politics involved. Uh, I wasn't playing ball with the politics, or I wasn't playing what I was supposed to. You know what I mean? And when that started getting into it, like, now I'm not gonna lie, I got scared because one, I'm like, okay, I started realizing that, you know, no matter how much money I've saved, no matter how much I've done for this company, one mistake, you're out, right? And I'm completely out. And that's the crappy part about it. And that would dwell on me. And while this was happening, I was introduced to someone that helped me, showed me how a certain business worked, and that's kind of where I started pursuing it. And I did it part time. I did, lending, real estate part time while I still had my manager job. But I realized one time, like most people, and I kept on being told this, like, hey, save up money with the side job so you have enough to quit, which is great advice that I didn't take. I'll be honest with you, I didn't take it. I'm a little bit of a quick draw with one of the books that I read calls me. I just make the decision, right? But I did contemplate it. I think I worked for a year as a loan officer, and working my full time job as a plant manager. And I remember just contemplating, when do I quit? Like, how do I quit this and that? And I remember when the decision came. We were actually on a call saying goodbye to one of the general managers, right? Actually, my general manager for the region I was at. And the funny thing about that general manager is that he was actually the general manager in our region when I first got hired in 2004. So it kind of went full circle. He worked all over the company, and then towards the end, he landed back with us in the Southwest, because we're out here in the Southwest. But when we're on the call saying goodbyes and stuff like that, one, it was a forced. All their employees, people that were there for a long time, were being asked to retire early, right? Severance package, something like that. And we're on the call. This was the GM, so one of the other managers, he was a little bit higher than me, asked him, "Hey, Mike, are you gonna be okay?" And I was kind of tripping out on the question. We're like it was a conference call on the phone. I'm like, huh? Why would he ask him that? And one, I do kind of feel that he didn't want to quit, yet he wasn't ready to retire. And I don't think it's because he loved the job. It's just financially he wasn't ready. And he mentioned that he's like, you know what? I just got to get a part time, and I think with the money they're giving me, I think we're gonna make things be figured out. And I'm like, this guy was with the company years already when I joined. I think he total was 35 years in that company. And at the end of the day, this is how he's being taken out. This is how he's being forced to retire. This is how he's being told you're no longer needed at this company. That's one thing that tripped me out. The second one was, I don't know how we found this out, but this guy had been there 35 years, and at that point in time, I think was only making maybe $10,000 to $15,000 more than I was annually in salary. And that just stuck with me. That just, wait, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life working here, and I'm gonna end up making about the same I am making now. And I don't know. I find that there's people that if that was their passion, that would have been great. If you constantly, you love that kind of job, that would have been great. But I didn't want that. I didn't want to get paid just to babysit. I didn't want to get paid just to tell people to do their job. You know what I mean? That's how I saw it at the time. But that's what made me make the decision. But right after that call, I remember dwelling on it, and I went to my wife. I sat down with my wife. I'm like, look, I got the steady job, full benefits, all that good jazz, and I know, we might be okay. But I want to take this opportunity. I've been doing the real estate for, at that point, I think I was doing it for 9 months, I think I said. And it's like, and I've made a decent amount of money doing it part time. I told my wife, I really want to try doing it full time to see how this goes. And we sat there, and remember, we're in the kitchen, kids are asleep. She's not saying much. And I'm like, I continue with like, look, I kind of feel it like it's like when we go to the pool, right? It's a hot summer day. You check the water with your toe, but it's a little chilly. And sometimes we hesitate. And I feel like sometimes when we hesitate and then we hesitate a little bit more, it makes it that much harder to jump into the pool. Even though you know that once you're in there, it's going to be fine. There's the initial shock, but once you're in there, the water feels great. But I told her, like, I felt like I was that guy that put his toe in the water, and now kind of feels like it's gonna be cold. Like, I know it's gonna be fine, but like I'm afraid of that plunge, of that change, right? And I'll never forget it. We're sitting there, and I was like, "Well, dive in, babe," and that was it. The next day, I put in my 2-week notice, and this is where we are today. It'll be 9 years this October that I resigned from that company, and it's been a hell of an experience because now, I've made way more than I made there. Uh, has it been hard? Has it been difficult? Yes. But here's the difference. I feel like every mistake, because mistakes you make a lot, especially when you're starting your own business. There's going to be plenty of mistakes. Hence why I want to start this group, so we can avoid some of those mistakes from us trying to, just wing it. But they're mine. And for sometimes I feel like, because I've lost money like crazy. I've lost money that I never thought I would have that money to lose, but I've lost that money. But I don't consider it losses. I consider it lessons. Like someone that pays, $40,000 for a semester at college. That's kind of how I see, not the mistakes, but sometimes the things I try, and they didn't go exactly how I expected them, but at least I learned how things really function. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we don't realize when we're starting our business is that you have to pay to play. Not everything's going to pan out, but you have to invest it. Now, here's the thing. People think it's money. No. You don't have to invest money if you don't have it. When you don't have money, what do you have? You have time. And a lot of people are going to say, like, I don't have enough time. I'm like, believe me, that's one of the, if you want to do something, you'll find the time. Someone told me this a long time ago when I made that excuse. Like, no, I don't have the time. I'm like, no. If you want to do something, you find the time. Say you really want to go out with a girl and she calls you right in between two appointments, this and that, and you'll figure it out. The problem is the need, right? We have to have a big why we're doing it. And we have to really believe in that why to keep us constantly going. Because it, they're not lying. There's a bunch of videos and stuff like that motivation is great and all, but that only takes you so far. There's gonna be days that suck. There's gonna be days that things didn't go. I tell this to people, like, it's inevitable. It's like saying I want to get in shape and I want to go to the gym, but I don't want to get sore. That's exactly how it is trying to learn something new or do something new. There's gonna be a little bit of pain, but here's the power of it though. Say you're overwhelmed. There's too many things to do, and you're feeling the pain of being overwhelmed because there's too many things to do. Now, you can choose to stay with that pain or say, you know what, I need to hire someone. Now, financially, you're going to feel the pain now, right? And also, your patience is going to feel the pain. But you chose those pains because you know that in the future, that little bit of upfront pain that you're feeling with doing things this way will eventually alleviate the pain you originally wanted to alleviate, and the training and stuff like that will get easier. So once again, you chose that pain. I choose to, you know what, I'm gonna put myself through the pain of having patience to train someone, because that pain is gonna be temporary. Even if I have to change people, eventually that's gonna be temporary, right? But it will definitely eliminate the pain of I'm overwhelmed constantly. Or the point I'm trying to make is that, one thing I realized is that I did add value to that company. I did, you know, I work hard. I was loyal. I moved my family cross country twice, right? And it was beneficial, super beneficial. I learned a lot. But at some point, you have to realize, do inventory of what you have, and tell yourself, could I do something on my own with all this knowledge, with all everything I have? And you can. But I just wanted to share on why I started when I started my business, reasons for it. And the reasons why I'm trying to do this with other people is because I do see the need. Talk to so many people that have these dreams and stuff like that. And sometimes the little hangups they have, I can relate with them. I used to think that way. Let me give you this example. And I'm going to be honest with you. I was at the park, and sometimes at the park after our little scrimmages, we chill, we hang out with my buddies and stuff like that. And one of my friends once asked me, because I forgot what I was sharing. Someone asked something personal, and I kind of have these little sessions, and I was talking to one of them, and I would like mention like, hey, look, there's this book, and there's this book, and there's this book. And one of my buddies goes like, hey, fool, seriously, does that reading shit work? And it's nothing on him. It's how we're wired. If he never seen his parents pick up a book or mention that they learned something from a book, what makes you expect that this person's going to have any respect or any thoughts of ever picking up that book? And the reason I say this is because I never saw my parents pick up a book. I can't even remember a magazine. The one thing I remember them, we used to get these little books. I think it's from Jehovah Witness. I don't know. The thing is, like, I never saw my parents sit down and read. So when it came to me, like, hey, you need to read, I'm like, all right. Like, how do you do that? Like, I don't know. Sit down and read. Like, you know what I mean? And I notice it now. And this is how I notice it, right? My older kids, can't remember which one of them. One of them like Harry Potter books. And he pushed himself to read. But I honestly, me, reading for pleasure, or reading things that I wanted to learn, I was in my late 20s. But the fact is that I remember the first book that I read, and I read the series. And that's when it kind of clicked on me, like, oh shoot, I found something that, that whole a lot of the sayings that people that read books say and annoy us that we don't read books made sense, right? Like the book was better. I read this book. I picked it up. I remember this book. And I don't even know why I picked it up. I was traveling cross country, and I walked into one of the bookstores, and one of my coworkers had mentioned this book, and I see at the bookstore right there at the airport. I'm like, why not? It was like $7. Pull it out, and I start reading it on the plane. I couldn't stop. Don't know what it is about that book or that series. I couldn't stop. It was just one after another, and I'm like, I've never read that way. And when I found that, like I don't know how to explain it. It's just I finished one book and I went and got the other one, finished it. It does help that where I traveled to, I didn't have TV for a minute, so I really focused on these books. But it was nonstop, just going through it. And that's when I realized, like, look, there is things that if you enjoy it, you will read. And as I got older, and you know, not older, but like during that time as well, one of the reasons I was traveling is was when I was getting promoted to new positions, or I was part of these, you know, task force around the company. And we also had to have like we would have like a book club within our work where we're all tasked to read one of these leadership books, which I read a ton. But there is a difference. I look back now and I'm like, okay, back then we were kind of tasked you have to read. So I just skim through and on the weekly calls, get on there and like, yeah, I would try to get like the high points and kind of talk about that. But I didn't immerse myself in the message, right? And I think that's another reason why like some things didn't stick. Because I feel like sometimes when you're reading, especially now when I read like leadership books or books that I want to read to improve the things I'm doing, is that you have to actively be like really wanting to do it. And one thing I found weird because there's videos and stuff, but I don't know why when I read or even audiobook, I cut it off of there. I for some reason feel that it sticks in my brain a lot better than if I watch something. And the best theory I can come up with is that like when you read or you hear something, your brain is automatically forced to create the image, imprinting it in your brain. When you watch something, it's already there, and your brain kind of just like, eh. That's why we get bored. But when you're doing something, it really solidifies it in your brain. Um, so that's why like, but even those things, like my buddy said, like, hey, does that reading stuff work? Like I'm pretty sure at his age, he's on the younger side, I believe. At his age, I probably thought the same. And the thing is, it's not about that. It's not okay. It's not about whether it works or not. It's about one. I do feel it works, and the other thing I noticed that the more knowledge I feed my brain, and the more I allow it to apply it. Like I've read books, you know, how to communicate and all that. Like when you try these things you read, or not even that. Like sometimes I some of the books I'll read, they'll say something, hey, you should do this and that. I'm like, hey, wait, I kind of did that, and it did work that way. So I have proof that like, hey, their concepts are not wrong. You've done it before now, but it just solidifies that when you do A plus B plus C, this turns out. Now you know that it wasn't dumb luck. It wasn't just you at the right moment at the right time. It was actually you subconsciously using the right skills to, you know, achieve something. So with all that, all these, I'm trying to start this group. Well, no, I'm started the group, but I'm trying to make this content to continue pushing people to. There's more out there. Your 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 limitations are only set by how much you are willing to learn. And I think that like a lot of the times when I meet people who are like frustrated or stuck or feel whatever, and that's I tell them like you're the one holding you there. You know, my whole speech about you are where you are because you are where you are. But that's not the point. It's not about ridiculing. I'm just hoping that these videos and this group really help us open our eyes to what's really available out there for our potential. There's a ton. And same thing with our first generation business owners. I'm not the only one that I've personally screwed it all up. I've seen friends, kind of get it backwards. But at the end of the day, the great part is that we're trying. I just feel like we could all make it easier for all of us to succeed because it's not about if there's enough business for all. I think that's where we get hung up. Like we see someone start a business and their business is going well, so we try to do the same. And I feel like anything you try, it's going to go well. Of course, it goes better if you know a lot about what you're trying to start. That is a key point because you want to make sure that you're knowledgeable enough to know when someone's either taking advantage of you or not saying the right things. Like, I love this. With me, like I used to work in the power industry. So when solar people come to my door and start telling me all this jargon, like I remember one time one kid's like, no, yeah, the PPA takes care of this, the PPA this. I'm like, you know what PPA stands for? Oh, yeah, that's like the system that this and that. I'm like, no. PPA is a power purchase agreement. I sat there and kind of not lectured, but kind of showed the kid like, hey, this is what you're looking at. This is what this means. This is what this means. You know, the point is that the more you make yourself knowledgeable in things, you know, the less scared you're gonna be, right? And I feel that that's the fear that a lot of us have from going from a full-time job, that someone, no matter what you do, you may show up 100% or you could show up 50%, you still get paid your check. The difference between going there and coming, doing something on your own, is that if you don't give 100% on your own, you're probably not going to eat. But if, you know what I mean? But there's also beauty in that, because it's all in your hands. And you can start creating systems to make sure that you're constantly eating if you do it right. It's not about the money. I believe it's like more about the freedom. The lifestyle I have with my family, once again, I'm super blessed. And I appreciate every moment and every second that I'm allowed to live the life I'm allowed to live with my family. Um and I desire that for everybody. Desire everybody to find that that happy place, find that happy career, and just sit there feeling blessed. Hopefully these videos help. All right, guys. See you on the next one.